Okay, welcome everybody to our Rethinking Plant Records Part 2. So thank you all for joining us. The reason we set this up, as we explained in the invite as well, is that for some of you who joined our workshop that we had at the American Public Garden Association annual conference. We had a bit short of time, so we didn't have time for many questions. And we also know that it was fully signed up with 60 people, and there were people who couldn't join. So we thought this was an opportunity to catch up with those who couldn't join, and also for those who have more questions that they didn't have the ability to ask at the last session. You could do that today. So together with me, so I'm Havard, I'm the CEO of Botanical Software. And together with me, we have Dr. Wahid Arsad, who is our botanical scientist, and David Toomey, who's our designer. So I will let Dave and Wahid introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Dave. I'm the product designer at Hortis and at Botanical Software. My background is in UX design, and I'm responsible for design of the app, as well as conducting user research and testing.
And hello, everyone. I'm Wahid. So I'm the botanical scientist in the team, and my background is in plant taxonomy and research. And alongside my kind of career, I've worked with botanic gardens in the UK and Europe, and I did my PhD with Kew Gardens. So great to be part of the team. So I thought I'd run through our topic for today. Well, some of the things we're going to be covering is we're going to have a recap of the workshop that we had at the APGA, and that was actually 3 weeks ago yesterday, which seems like time's flown by. So it'd be good to bring together the thoughts from that. We're also going to talk a little bit about why we're rethinking plant records and some of our concepts around what we're developing. Then we're going to have a few interactive polls and present to you our roadmap. And we'd like to end with a bit of a Q&A session to allow you time to answer and ask a load of questions. So our team, which some of you've met already, Havard and Dave on the call. We have JP, our tech lead. He's our software engineer and leading the team of a few engineers. So Will and Miles are also part of our team. We also are part of Candide, which you'll hear about in a second. And there are other software engineers on board who we closely collaborate with. And then on the bottom left, we have Marguerite and Jose, who help us with the legacy app, Floria. So our expanded team at Candide is part of 75 or so, a big group of people, 75 or so members of staff. The majority of those are software engineers, but there are also product designers and product managers there. It's a small group of horticulturalists, and then we have a team of machine learning and augmented reality specialists. So these are real cutting edge technologies that we're able to incorporate in some of the ways in which we're building our software. And there are also a few data scientists and a lot of resources behind us, which is really exciting. And the two main areas in which Candide operates is really garden visitation, so providing digital ticketing services and visitor experience solutions for gardens, and also as an online marketplace for plant sellers. And they have two main apps which brings together this community of gardeners, and hopefully we'll have a bit more of a chance to talk to you about the augmented reality app a bit later on. So more on that later, but I'll hand you back to Havard, who'll tell you about our journey.
Yeah, so some of this is quite well known to some of the people joining us. We have a very diverse group coming today and watching. So I thought I'd give just a quick backdrop of the journey of Botanical Software. So we started in 2007. We worked together with the RSPG collaboration with the companies in Norway, and we already in 2008 had our first mobile solution out on the sort of the Windows Mobile embedded handheld, which is now yeah, it's a very clunky experience compared to what you can achieve today. So In 2018, we launched our first mobile app on iOS and Android, which is still being used by a large group or reasonably large group in our communities. I think we have about 700 users. And then 2018, RSPG collaboration ended, and we joined Candide just around last year. And we're going to talk about, that's why we're here. We're going to talk about what we're going to do together with Candide as a team. So the idea about rethinking plant records is Wahid will talk a bit more about why we're rethinking plant records. But one aspect is, we know that people are struggling with different problems in their daily life in relation to plant records. So we did a survey at the workshop 3 weeks ago, and the first question was state of your plant records. This was really useful because we sort of have seen these patterns when we've talked to gardens around the world, and this is sort of confirmed. And we can see here that people are having problems of getting their plant records up to date, and they are also struggling with having accurate plant records. And you can see from these graphs here that there's not very few people who are very happy with the situation. There's quite a few people who are very unhappy with the situation, and there's quite a few people who are in between. So this was known, but it was still very useful, and we're really grateful that people help us with our research here to sort of quantify what people are struggling with. The other thing we looked at, sorry about that. The other thing we looked at was the reasoning behind why people are unhappy. And we did this word cloud. Now that was a bit difficult to analyze on the fly there. So we've cleaned this up a bit. Before I go on, I also would like to stress that we're going to write an article about all the numbers we got so that it becomes more accessible for you afterwards. So it's not really necessary to take notes here. We'll record this as well, obviously. But what is, if we clean this up, so we people who mentioned time and time lag, or so we basically used the synonymous and cleaned up this. So you can see that why people are unhappy, it's time, it's resources, it's funding, the software training is missing, etc. So this is really interesting in that we, what we want to do is, of course, try to address some of these questions and make this word cloud very different, hopefully in a few years, but we'll get more into that later. I don't know if Wahid or Dave has any sort of comments to this, or anybody else for that matter. No, okay, cool. The last thing we asked, which I think is a very important question, is how do you use your plant records? And we have looked at this from 3 angles. There are the aspirational gardens, those who are not up to date. They really just hope to get your plant records up to date. And then there's the gardens who are somewhat satisfied with what they have, but they're just using their records to know what they have. And then there's the last group, and they are able to use their records beyond that, sort of as a strategic tool. We'll talk a bit more about that maybe today, but what we want to achieve or help you with is to allow you to easily come into that 15% group so that you can use your plant records, not just to keep a track of what you have, but to use it for other things beyond just inventory. So hopefully we'll get a bit more details on that today. After this round of surveys, we then had breakout session, and we asked 2 big questions. Are there anything you are unable to do today that you would have liked to do with your plant records? And the things you like and dislike with your current workflows. This was quite a challenging discussion, and we had 60 people spread out in 70 in 12 breakout rooms, and we tried to collate these numbers. We're not going to spend too much time on this, but we want to share with you. So what we have done is we've collated all this information, and so what we can see here is the patterns of what would you like to get out of your plant records. There's a mix here of ease of use. So people want an easier product to use. We'll share this with you. So there's a lot of thoughts and details, but you can see that features and capabilities, that people are missing stuff that they can't do today with the product they're using. Data sharing is quite important. You see that it's very important for people that they can't do today for various reasons. GIS and mapping for some people. Integration with other products seems to be something that people would like to do that they can't do today. And somebody started to talk about automation and how they can share their system or their data with other types of products. And then there were some who also had a bit more of a long-term idea about strategic tool and mobility, etc. So this is like a snapshot of what people wish they could do that they're unable to do today. This differs from gardens to gardens, obviously, depending on their background and where they are in their, what kind of system they have. Some people have spreadsheets, some paper, others use Iris and Flora, etc. So but it's interesting to see what people would like to do. We also spent a bit of time looking at the dislikes and likes. This is what people like with their current situation. And you see some people are very happy with their situation from an ease of use perspective, features, searching, mobile workflow, etc. So that's very interesting. And if we go further back here to look at dislikes, you see that this is a repeat of the word cloud we saw earlier, that people are struggling with being up to date. They have technical issues. That's quite a big one. You know, people are struggling with IT staff, whatever, and staffing, resources. So this sort of confirms a lot what we thought of or knew or assumed that we've seen before in other sort of discussions. But it's very helpful for us to quantify this even for, and the background behind here is very interesting. You know, whatever people are writing down here, hard to check that the data is for accuracy, for example. So there's some what should I say, nuggets in here for us to look at further down the line when we work further on the product and also have these kind of discussions with you. Okay, I'm checking to see if there's any hands up or any questions so far. I'll go back to our, so this after that session, we then broke out to after the breakout, we shared those needs and feedbacks from the audience. I don't know if anybody has any who went to the workshop or didn't go to the workshop, who have any reflections if you went to the workshop, or any thoughts about the workshop and the discussions we had. Maybe you've thought about things you didn't mention there or something. I don't know if anybody has anything to share from that. That's fine. I think a lot of people had their opportunity to do some, what shall I say, brain drain or sort of therapy session with us. So it's all on the Miro board here. So we'll share that with you. So that's good. So why are we rethinking plant records? Wahid, over to you, please.
Yeah. So yeah, why are we rethinking plant records? Well, we've kind of looked at this for a long time, and so have other institutions. And I think these two graphs tell you quite a lot about the state of plant records today. So on the left here, you can see from about 4,000 gardens listed on the BGCI's garden search. That's a website that you can access. Only 19% of those have a computerized plant record system. And that means there are 81% who either have paper-based records or none at all. And actually there's a similar situation and a similar story with BGAN's gardens. So these are the botanic gardens in Australia and New Zealand, about over 130 of them. And there, only 6% have a dedicated computerized system, while about 55% have Excel or basic databases, and then there are about 39% who use paper-based plant records. And in the context of everything else and technology and sort of recent technological advancements, the opportunities that those have given us, you'd think we ought to be in a better position with our plant records and the way we tackle our inventories. And actually, this story affects many gardens and their workflows. And insofar as that, over 2 years ago, I think it was, that BGAN sent out a survey, and that survey revealed that 90% of gardens were dissatisfied with their current record keeping system. and 97% of them agreed that an appropriate system would help them achieve better plant records. So you can see there's a lot of dissatisfaction out there, and with technology and the advancements that it offers and the opportunities that it offers, that we can really strive to become in a better position. So why is this important? Well, in the next slide, you'll see that the BGANs set out a working group, as they set out a tender process to find a suitable system to provide to all of their member gardens. And they were looking for one that would really meet the current and future needs of gardens and their demands, as well as being robust and reliable, and also, most importantly, very easy to use. And I'm sure many of you have opinions on that with their current systems. And with all that in mind, we were really delighted that our product Hortis won that tender process. And you are welcome to read about that in the BGANs magazine called The Botanic Gardener on the right. And I think this is a good opportunity to really introduce you to Hortis and talk a little bit about what it will bring for you. So on that very exciting note, I'll pass you to our designer, Dave, who will tell you about some of the design principles in our software.
Well, thanks, Wahid. So I mean, the statistics that Wahid's just been talking us through there with the garden members of BGCI and the Botanic Gardens Australia and New Zealand show us that there are some real blockers that have prevented gardens from adopting digital and dedicated plant record systems. We know what those are. We've spoken about them: time, resourcing, funding, all of those things. Even just the mental overhead for somebody that has, a full plate of work is a lot to sort of take on another task and learn a new system and so forth. And so we hope to overcome some of those blockers through good design, by designing a product that's easy to use for expert and non-expert users alike. And if we look at consumer apps and apps from other industries that have adopted more sort of, had the luxury of having sort of more modern apps, we can see how user-centered design can, when it's done right, can allow for a kind of frictionless experience. I think it's fair to say that some of the, for me personally at least, some of the best apps that I use, or some of the most helpful tools that I interact with, are things that actually I don't think about very much, and they just kind of work, and they're just there, and it's kind of frictionless. There's no real pain points, and often that's a result of a design process that has asked a lot of questions about the users, done a lot of research, and understood exactly what those users need to do. And so that's the approach that we're taking, and by talking to as many people as we can, garden members are BGANs and staff members at all different levels, from horticultural staff through to curators and directors and everybody involved, volunteers. We can listen to their problems, understand the things that they like about the current system, understand of course, importantly, the things that they don't like, and just generally understand the sort of workflow that they go through. There's obviously lots of commonalities and similarities between botanic gardens, but everywhere works slightly differently. And if we can understand that, then we can design a product that uses the same language that people do at these gardens, people are familiar with, that approaches tasks in a way that people are familiar with and people already like doing. Then we can design a product that's hopefully easier to adopt, easier to pick up for non-experts and experts alike, and has a lower learning curve. And so ultimately, the aim of good design here is to design an app that lets people focus on the work that they're doing, rather than struggling or figuring out how to use the app itself. And so on the next slide, I've included a fun kind of diagram just to explain a little bit about perhaps the differences between what design is and what user experience is. It's a very English looking picture here, which is very familiar to me. So, you have the pavement on the left, which is, I suppose, the intended design. And then you have all these different paths off on the right where, people have taken shortcuts, and that's the sort of true user experience, if you like. So unless you're talking to your users, you can't really, or to people, sorry, you can't really understand how people use things and how people actually want to do things. So it's a key part of sort of product design, and something that we're going to utilize in order to make Hortis frictionless and smooth and positive experience for everyone, hopefully.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I trying to sort of think about that image. What does it tell us? Yeah, no, it's good. So what some of these people have seen this before, but I think it's sort of worth noting in relation to the idea about why Hortis, and the couple of things that we wanted to achieve, which we believe is will hopefully answer or help some of those challenges that we listed earlier on. One is the ability to access and use your records wherever you are. That sort of should be quite sort of easy in 2021 to explain the motivation behind, but that is not so easy to achieve from a technical point of view. Luckily, we have the skill sets and the team to do that. So that means that we design that product to work on mobile and laptop and your desktop at the same time. And that means also that it's a cloud-based product. So that means that you don't need to install anything. You could just start using the product. This will open up a lot of possibilities as well. Like we hear with collaboration, when it's on the cloud, I don't know if some of you maybe use Google Docs or other types of cloud-based products, suddenly realize that there are new ways of working that wasn't possible before. So this is a great opportunity for the community of Botanic Gardens to share and collaborate, not only within inside your own institution, but also across not only state borders, but country borders and on the different side of the continent, if you like. So this will help you on, I don't know if you remember that one slide, we saw a lot of people struggling with IT, for example. Here it is, if you have internet access, you have Hortis available. That also removes the installation problems that people struggle with for different reasons. And then the last thing, which is why Dave spent a bit of time talking about this question of design. It sounds like, everybody says, yeah, we're trying to make it easy to use. Everybody says that, but it's not trivial. It's actually quite hard. And when it feels right for you, that means that we put a lot of effort into getting there. So that's why we're also going to spend a lot of time with the community to dig through, with our prototypes and beta tests, etc. So with that in mind, the other thing we're going to do today as well is to dig into some of those, what shall I say, ideas we have around some of those aspects that relate to the rethinking. Why are we doing this again? So, but before that, I wanted to also say that these are like the fundamentals, and that is to be more up to date with your records. We saw that a lot of people struggle with that. And how do you do that? Well, that by making the product available wherever you are, you can suddenly do more things at the moment when things are happening. The other thing is being more accurate, meaning, so that's a design question as well, so that people are given the options in a clear manner and are not sort of confused about what they're supposed to do. And then, as I mentioned earlier today, if we have accurate and up-to-date data, then we can actually start using the data more as a more reliable source, not only for managing your collection, but also as an institution. And that's the whole kind of, it's like a hierarchical growth, you might say. When you reach that level, we can start using the data for much more than just knowing what you have in the collection. So we mentioned this on the last webinar as well, but this is worth mentioning, and that's trying to look at several things that people are struggling with. And these is some of our ideas, and we're going to talk about a few of those. We're going to talk about value scoring. And this is basically what you saw in the earlier slide, understanding the value of a collection. And then we're also going to talk a bit about software integration, because this is something that we know quite a few are looking for. And the last thing we're going to talk about is the draft approval workflow. The other things we will pick up at a later point, I think, but plant material tags and data quality scoring. I'm not going to talk too much about that today, unless people have questions about these things. That's obviously time for that. So, but the first thing we're going to talk into here is, or dive into, is this word, which sounds very cryptic. why are we talking about this in the first place? With this looks like a slide for computer scientists. Well, it goes back to the idea of having a cloud service which opens up a new opportunity for us, and that is to focus on plant records. But the gardens differ a lot between their needs and how they operate. And instead of us creating a product that does absolutely everything, we think it's much more useful to create a product that can integrate with a lot of things, so that if you have requirements that are unusual, you could still be able to use that kind of capability with another product, and these two products talk together. So, and this is possible in the world of cloud-based products in much different way than what it was possible if you go 10 years back or 20 years back. So this is a very high priority for us. I will put a few things here, like GIS systems. We obviously will have mapping in Iris, but some people have a GIS department. They use GIS tools for much more than just regular record keeping. They might use geoprocessing. So that's one aspect. Plant recognition services, nomenclature services, etc. And we have also visitation experience. All these things doesn't have to be part of our product, but it could be something that can use the data or contribute data into the system. I put in crop planning here. I know, for example, some very large institutions have these extremely big displays where they have this dedicated crop planning systems. You know, I didn't know that until a year ago or something. So there are all these kind of quirky sort of use cases around about in our community. So what we thought we'd do here is to run a quick survey with you to see if you have any systems today that or ideas that for the future. Maybe you would like to have your own image management system. Here it's called a digital asset management system. Maybe there's a product you use for other things that you would have liked to integrate with the plant record system if you could. So we're going to do a quick sort of, I think there's a poll here, yeah. And so this is very simple. You just either, if you want to use your phone to run the survey, or your own computer, if you want to use the computer on, then Wahid will send out a link to this poll. And then we're just going to run this. And then as you type the product name. So if you want to say, you would love to be able to get your Google Documents integrated with your plant record somehow, or your ArcGIS system, or etc. And then we'll show the results as we progress here. And let me just give me a second here, and I can see if I can. So
I've dropped the link in the chat. So if everyone is able to find that, it should just be in the Zoom chat. But of course, you're welcome to use your phone if you want to. The QR code, which is becoming more and more popular these days, also in plant records.
Yeah, if anybody, it's a bit late, I could pop back to the QR code, but so here we go. Yeah, images, ArcGIS, S3 ArcGIS, yeah, Google Docs. So it's, you know, we were thinking about. You see this in other products, like more sort of office products. We use an accounting system, for example, that integrates with customer relationship systems, integrates with PayPal, integrates with all kinds of different things. And integration is just like a configuration. I don't know if maybe you want to start selling extra surplus garden plants to visitors. So have it on Etsy, or I don't know. There's all kinds of different kind of scenarios that might be very useful. Smartsheet. What is Smartsheet, by the way? You don't need to divulge yourself. I've never seen Smartsheet. Is that Google Sheets but smarter, maybe?
Yeah, it's a system that's used a lot in this country that sort of takes a spreadsheet and puts it on steroids. You can add images. There's an app. You can add photos and even GIS, the GPS locations of where things are. It'll notify you of additions to rows and sheets and things like that. So it's a pretty good product. We use it a lot.
Yeah, and I see Specify. I believe that's the sort of used for herbarium vouchers, I'm guessing. So yeah. Okay. Cool. We'll let this run for 30 more seconds. So one thing that people haven't mentioned there, and this is one thing we want to do, is obviously to integrate with name services for nomenclature and taxonomy. And that's the dialogue that we're going to push forward with the community, or those services that are available. Some of them have some API available already, but this will be then more of an opt-in, opt-out kind of thing for you. And some of them might even be, some of these things might eventually also become paid services that you buy a subscription to get specifically very good data, or I don't know, it's hard to, sales area, yeah, that's great. Dropbox, yeah, OneDrive, yeah. Excellent. I'll stop the poll on this one, and thank you very much. That's really interesting. I think we're definitely going to look at this, and I think also when we start seeing patterns here, I think people also get the idea of how this might work when they see it in practice, and then maybe other new sort of ideas will pollinate or germinate, I think is the word I want here in this context. Okay, great. The other thing we also wanted to just share with you, and we're going to do a question around this as well. This is something we have done a lot of discussions and research on, but and we're quite confident that this is something that people would use to some degree, but that depends a bit on the workflow. But what we believe is that if you have a draft approval feature in your product, and that's sort of like a very consistent and user-friendly kind of approach to it that is omnipresent, if you like, then you can allow somebody who may not have all the knowledge about a change, or maybe are volunteers or all kinds of user scenarios, but they see that something is wrong and they can post their opinion, and somebody else can look at it and then improve it. So we have one experience, for example, you can imagine changing the identification of a plant in the garden. It's typically something you only expect maybe the taxonomy, depends on your garden, but maybe only the taxonomist allowed to make those changes. But there might be valid opinions from all kinds of walks of life in the garden. Even we could even see citizen science being introduced here, where visitors can make, I don't know if that's a good case, but anyway, with having this draft approval availability, you can basically change how you work. And in theory, you could get a much better participation, but also then more accurate data, because they see something is wrong and they make that call, and then somebody will look at it. So we're going to have a question around if you think this will be something you would adopt if you had that opportunity, and how you might adopt it. So there's a couple of approaches to that. I don't know if anybody has any questions or queries around this particular concept before we go on to the next question or point. That's fine. There's no. This particular case here, you can see that somebody's changed Strelitzia juncea to Strelitzia regina, and then somebody's approving that, or not, as the case may be. Yeah. Hello.
I was just wondering if there could be an option for them to provide a source. That way, if a person thinks they know the ID, they have to go find a source that we can also reference.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a very good point. I think this is very much like a very simplified example of how the whole kind of workflow could be, and definitely the source and maybe notes and all kinds of things to sort of what shall I say, qualify your opinion. And yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Okay, so the way we see this is also that there will be a delay. We've looked at this. We'll talk about this at some other point, but we see that there are some patterns that are a bit disruptive because you're waiting for something to be approved. Oh, will it take weeks and so forth before it's approved? So obviously the user experience as well is very important here, that these things are looked after quickly so that you don't get kind of problems of looking after your data quickly enough. Okay, so thank you very much for that question. The other thing, which is also something we've looked at, and that's very close to our heart. We're going to have a webinar particularly about this on the 12th of August, where we going to talk about value scoring and why this is a topic of importance to us, or for the community. We believe is that it's quite hard for botanic gardens to communicate and track the value of their collection, meaning as in relate to your mission as a garden. So a botanic or plant material might look very nice or not, but it has some value for all kinds of reasons. Something might be extinct in the wild, for example, or it can have a very high conservation value, or this might be planted by, you know, President such and so. I'm not going to mention presidential names, by the way. That's so, or some doctor or some. So that has some value for your garden. You should look after this. It's a memorial tree. It's a champion tree. All kinds of metrics, but that varies from garden to garden. And this is a concept that we think is will help you not only to visualize. So when not only staff members are looking at this record, they're going to, a gardener thinks this is about to die. So there's two options: compost or resurrection. then this will help the gardener the hort staff to sort of see what action to take. And we've looked at the modeling here where we use medals, and we see that this approach would you can rank your taxa. So maybe your collection is you're very proud of your cycad collection, for example. So you say that any cycad, regardless, is important. So that gives you sort of on the genus level some value that is heightened because it's a cycad. You want to look after it for some reason. That's just what. And then maybe some other, if it's of a certain conservation ranking, then that will also give you value. And then you take that combined with whatever you have on the accession. So you could say anything that's wild collected should have some higher value. But if it's wild collected with very good data on coordinates, for example, where it was collected, then it's getting even higher value. So this could be quite complicated, it sounds like, and it might be. But the key point is that you will then, instead of looking at, oh, this year we have so many accessions, last year we had so many accessions. Actually, even if you have less plants, your collection could have grown in value immensely because you're doing the right things as a curator, as hort staff, as well. You manage to keep those really important plants alive, and the other ones that are less important, for some reason, I don't know, there was a drought, I don't know. So what is nice then is two things. You can talk to your staff, you can create more visitation around this, but you can also monitor your collection over time with these metrics, helping you to guide you on the way, as it were. We're going to go do also a little poll on that, see if you have any input on that or how you operate. But we do that first, and then we can, or maybe I'll see if anybody has any questions about this idea, this principle, before we do the poll. Maybe, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
There are a couple of questions in the chat. So Shari, will users be able to notify you of an image mismatched to an accession? It's quite a neat idea.
So will users be able to notify you of an image mismatched to an accession? So yeah, you mean, yeah, so that's a very, I think generally when the thing we need to solve here, as you saw with the draft approval, is the general infrastructure for notification. Because you have to be able to make a change and say, oh, somebody needs to approve that. You should probably have the ability to say, can John approve that? And then that also already gives that idea that you should be allowed to point out maybe that something is wrong. You might not have the right answer, but like, that's a very good point. That picture is completely, doesn't belong here. Can you, yeah, that might be the wrong accession, or yeah, that's a very cool thing, yeah. Yeah, so the idea of having a list of pending approvals will definitely be the idea that we will look at. And the one thing we also discussed, which we're going to have a poll on with you guys, is that initially we thought you want maybe a model where the senior staff is approving, like looking after all the minions who are coming with data. But you might have a model where you actually allow peer-to-peer moderation as well. Like you see that in other industries where you may not, because the Gregs of this world are overworked. They don't have time to look at after this. So you can have two hort staff allowing to look at each other's work, and then if they two agree, then it's good enough and it can pass. That's just like these kind of constructs can help you to sort of change. There was a very good example at Smithsonian, I believe, who did this on herbarium vouchers that had been scanned, and then if three people, regardless who they are, had the same opinion, then it was correct, even though we didn't know what their background was. So there are kind of mechanisms where we can be smart about it and help you to get accurate data at a lower cost, you might say, quicker and easier. So that's really cool. Then is there an option to add your own matrix to establish the score? Yeah, that's basically what our research would. We need to figure out that, what are people looking for and how complicated, or what are the metrics? And we will have this kind of dialogue with people, but we know that it's different from garden to garden. That's for sure. That's number one. And we know that it makes sense to associate it with the taxon, with the accession, and the plant material. The plant material is the last one because some plants are extremely healthy, should somehow be sometimes considered more valuable than the ones that are not healthy. I would also add one extra cool complexity here that we realized when we have a few sort of specialists on our team. There was a mathematician who helped us on this last plant paradox. You think that if you have just one last of a species, that's quite an important information. And the idea that would give more value because it's the last one. But then we realized that if you have two plants and one of them dies, suddenly your collection grows in value. That's not really useful. It's actually the other way around. It should be the other way around. So we have a solution for that, but I'm not going to go into detail. But that's basically something that's a no-no, in that stimulates to kill plants to get a better value because it's just one left. Obviously, you want more. And there's also that kind of two plants of the same accession. They're genetically the same versus two species or two plants of the same species but different genetic source material are more valuable in a collection, you might say. So
I think it's also a good point Shari made about your own matrix, because obviously the way plants are ranked will differ from institution to institution, and it will be very heavily influenced by your mission. So of course, if your mission is very research and conservation focused, you might have certain metrics that are relevant for your collection, whereas if your collection is more relevant for education or historic importance or recreation, you might want to tweak those parameters. So that's certainly something we're interested in exploring further.
I know, for example, National Trust in England, they have all these country estates where some of these trees are just like planted by Capability Brown or something. They're just a Quercus robur or something. I mean, not just, but it's a wonderful oak tree, but they're not as a botanical specimen necessarily super valuable, but as a if it's get chopped down, it's like disaster. So yeah, it's a very interesting how these things are subjective depending on where the garden is and what their purpose is, you might say, the mission. Cool. So we're going to do another kind of survey. Oh, I'm going to start the thing again first. My apologies here. This is not the one. So we're going to now do 2 questions for you. Wahid will send the link if you want to follow that, or if you want to scan with your phone, if that's easier for you. It's a word cloud again, so the other one. So you might prefer the keyboard on your laptop or desktop or what you have. Or some people are so talented on the phone keyboard. I'm still feel like an amateur when I watch the people who can do that really efficiently. So let me start the actual poll for you guys. So we have 2 questions for you. So we're going to let this first thing go here. So if you have the ability to adopt draft approval, do you think you would adopt it? And then there's the yes, I disagree, or I strongly agree. And then it's a more of a challenging question is we would only allow senior staff to approve changes. Or we would allow for peers to approve each other's work. So this second last model here was something we came up with very recently when we've been doing this research. And it's an interesting idea. And I think this won't guide us into what we do. I think it makes sense maybe to have this option available because the thing is when you have a system where things are logged and people can see who's done what, it does change the dynamics anyway. So most people are responsible staff members. So yeah. Before we go on to the next slide, I don't know if if there's any comments or people have any reflections on these things here. I can see that 4.2, so it's quite a high level of excitement, you might say, to have draft approval. That's really brilliant. And then here you see that some people would only allow senior staff. And then we also see that some people think this is worth exploring, and some people don't. And I think that's fine. And I think it depends on how you're organized and who and what kind of collections you have, probably, etc. Anybody has a comment here? So yeah. Yeah, many staff are too quick with assumptions regarding missing accessions and the reassignment. Yeah. That's the thing, of course. Approve is like if you have that yes no thing, you might be just it was from your friend. The option to say no is a bit rough maybe. So you might be sort of putting peer pressure on your buddy to approve all your stuff before Friday because you're going off to work. So it's a complicated story that may be more politics than technology here. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, let's go for the next one, which is I'm just trying to go to the next slide here. So that is to your point, Shari, or looking at a bit more, how would you, what metrics do you think you would use if you could measure your collection with the values? So here we could say conservation could be one, provenance, whether it's wild or collected, historic value could be one. I was thinking you could have taxonomy, certain species that are maybe certain educational plant material that's very useful for educational purposes for one reason or another. So I don't know if anybody, I suppose we need to, here we go, yeah. Dedication, oh yeah, exactly. So that when you say dedication, that means like sort of memorial trees kind of thing where, or dedication, oh yeah, that's to sort of in memory of this, that, and the other, yeah. Historic significance, target genera, yeah. Age, oh yeah. Of course, maybe it's like a certain age it is triggered. Sort of difficulty in replacement. Yeah. That's another interesting thing we've seen, and that is you might have plants that for you might have like 5. Let's say you have 5 accession of a species, but you're the only garden among, there's only 3 other gardens in the world who has this species. Of course, it's then very valuable, but even more so because it's very unusual to have in collections, for example. Yeah. Let's see if there's any historic value, education, yeah. Monetary value, yeah. Yeah, of course, yeah. I suppose that is from the cycad group. Those who have cycads, they have some very extremely valuable plants. Yeah. monetary IUCN status. Yeah, yeah. That's great. Education. Yeah. That's, any reflections or comments from anybody on this this graph we have in front of us now? No? Good. I mean, that's really useful. And we didn't ask if you would use this if you could. That's something but we got a comment here, useful. So that's good. I think it's what it's really what is really interesting, I feel, is that it helps people to communicate their mission, not only between staff, but also with visitors, everybody alike. And it helps you, I suppose. What I'm hoping is that people could create reports, annual reports, send it to the board, and it makes sense. Our collection is now, I don't know, 2,497 points. Last year, it was so much points. I don't know, but so many gold medal accessions. I don't know. The language is yet to be refined, but it's. I think it's really speaks to my heart, at least, on the way of rethinking how plant records can be used in an institution. Okay, I think we'll. Thank you so much for that. It's really brilliant. So going back to our session here. So looking at time, I think we have time for a. So this demo, I think some of you haven't seen, some of you have seen. So what we'll do is we have enough time to run a small demo. So we're just going to show you one key aspect of Hortis, which focus on. I'm going to see if that extra slide is there. No, we didn't have that slide. Sorry. Come on, back. So the idea of lighted, powerful that we talked about, but also that the mobile first aspect, that it works on the mobile first, but it works on other devices. And then the last thing is one thing that we've seen before, and is the idea that information is there's so much you can express in an image, and the same is when you see a map. Suddenly it's a different story altogether. Well, let's do the demo, and then we can explain a bit further what the thinking behind it. So I'm just going to talk a bit about the main principles here. So I'm going to do. Is it full screen already? Yeah. So this is what we think of as a dashboard. Now we can see here the collection snapshot is using just metrics of the collection, but obviously when we have value scoring in place, this makes more sense to see what's going on in your collection compared to, let's say, since January or something. So you see some red, it's like the stock exchange of your garden kind of thing, where you see things are pointing in the right direction. The point here is that you come from work, you've been away for 3 weeks, and you see what's going on. And then you can have things more further down here, what the team is doing and what you've been doing in the last few days. So this is still to be explored more, how this is going to look, but that is, then you can also, if you wonder about these numbers, you can go in and dig into this more deeply. But what the main purpose of this little demo is the search capabilities. And the approach we're doing with Hortis is that people should be allowed to search whenever. And it's a bit like the sort of Google approach in a way, that you could just click on and look for things. And the way we also think here is that we should just be allowed to search. I think that often you have a system where you have to think first what you're looking for, and then you sort of finally find where you can search. We're just saying, I want to look for things. So I can start typing, but you can also filter in. So we want to look for plant material. So we're going to do that. But I could have just typed a species name, and then I would have got data related to that species name, for example. I'm going to use filter a bit here. So this example is a bit more complex. And I'm going to looking for some Melaleucas. So I just typed in Melaleuca, and you see that it will help me with suggestions. So I can tap on maybe something I searched recently, or something that that matches some of the letters I've already searched. And I'm happy. I just want the Melaleuca. So I click search. And then Hortis will give you 4 things to look at. It will leave you the map of the garden, so you can see where it is in the garden straight away. It will give you any images you have of Melaleuca, so you can look at that. Sometimes you know, oh, it's the Melaleucas with yellow flowers. I can't remember the species name. Or you know exactly what it's called, but you want to sort it by something. So that's when the list is handy. So this gives you like 4 different viewpoints of your data. And the last one is obviously if you have wild collected material, so you can see where it was collected in the wild. And that's sometimes extremely important as well. And the nice thing with this, so I'm looking at the same Melaleucas just with the 4 different viewpoints. And when I look at the map, I can then start discovering further. I can click on these 3 ones in the meditation garden, and then I can explore that. Oh yeah. So you get an entry point into your collection data from all these 4 points. And you have this share and all that. So if I cross that, you can see I can do the same on the world map, where I can look at the collection data here, where it was collected, and which plants were collected at this particular plant or point in Australia in this case. So this has simplified the search, because sometimes you think I need to look for images. No, you're looking for Melaleucas, and here they are in the different ways, and you can find them. So these are basically the 4 cornerstones, you might say, of your data set as a collection. So we're very excited about this approach, because it makes it much easier to locate data in a sort of a fussy way, you might say, without having to be specific. Yeah, thank you for joining. So we'll say there was somebody who had to go. The recording will be available, so that's great. Thank you for participating. So I think that's the end of our little demo here. I don't know if anybody has any questions about what you've seen so far about that.
I think Harvey had a question. Would the list feature allow for different sort parameters?
Yeah, that's sorting and filtering is like a sort of like a standard feature. It's, of course, you see there's a filter button here. Now, this is a prototype on the mobile, so there's always some constraints on the screen real estate of what you can display and what you can sort. But we will definitely, this is something like we will discover further during our discovery with and beta testing of what people are looking for. But yeah, I said that's a short answer. Dave, do you want to give the more detailed answer?
Yeah. Maybe I would just say that you wouldn't always have to search for the thing you were looking for. You could also, in the main menu there at the bottom, you've got the sort of home, collection, taxonomy, and help buttons. And so if you click on your collection tab there, the first view you'd get would be that sort of your table view essentially, and yeah, from there you'd be able to filter or sort on a number of different things. But yeah, it's not in this particular prototype, but yeah.
Yep. Oh, thank you, Dave. Okay, cool. We'll go back to our slides here. Now, the other thing we wanted to share with you was more like yeah, exactly, common names. That's a very good point. I think what we will see when you mention common names is that traditionally, looking at other products that we worked on them before and stuff, that common names have that we know that certain gardens, they have hort staff and also volunteers that are much more comfortable with common names. The challenge with common names is obvious in that they're same common names sometimes referring to the say 2 different species and stuff like that, but maybe not so much in one particular garden. So yeah, I think now that we go one step and say draft approval, we're basically democratizing the plant records a bit more. You could argue that having common names as a more like a first citizen data that you could actually search for makes a bit of sense. I agree. Yeah. Yeah, common names is tricky. No, it isn't actually, but it's just a different type of data. Yeah. Great. We're gonna go back to our slides. Yeah. So another thing we want to share with you, just as a more like a product that Candide has worked on quite a bit, which is Candide labels. I think maybe Wahid, you could say a few words about that. And we'll run the short video.
Yeah, so as Havar mentioned, and there is quite some endless potential with some of the technologies that are available to us. And one of these has already been explored by the Candide group, and that involves augmented reality. So one of the ways in which their sort of products function is they involve machine learning. So there's a machine learning model which can automatically identify plants from a photograph that you take, and then it can allow you to put a virtual label in the space all through your mobile phone. So it triangulates a position, a coordinate, then it places a virtual label in that position, and you can see from the video demonstrated by my colleague Helen that you can then scan a bed and see all of your virtual labels in place. And in this particular context, this is a consumer app, so it's there to stimulate interest in plant identification and labeling and connect people to growing and care information in this particular context. But you can see how this type of technology, so augmented reality, you can see how this could have a future application in plant collection scenarios. So it's not just for visitation, but perhaps also in curation purposes as well. So there's that whole using plant records as a backbone and incorporating that data capture and visitation and these different technologies that really open up new doors and really provide some endless potential for us. So there's also that exciting angle to explore as well.
Well, what we see, yeah, sorry, wait.
I was going to say, I do encourage people to try out this app. It's called Candide Labels, and it should be, well, it is available across the world, and there's only one caveat, that it only works on iOS devices, so that's Apple devices. But yeah, Shazam for plants. Yeah, that's an interesting.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. Yeah. What is we see a lot of, particularly gardens with historic significance, who, you know, there's the plant label that makes your garden look like a graveyard. That's not me saying that, but anyway, that's some people. So this opens up some more opportunities in how you also design certain visitation experiences, so that people can focus on the visuals of the garden, and also allow people to explore more details, obviously, with the app. But the other side of that is, of course, if everybody goes around looking at your smartphone, that's not necessarily an ideal scenario either. So we're very much aware of that balance as a group, you might say, in terms of how not only you want to explore the garden, but the balance between technology and enjoying the actual garden itself, so which is important. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide here. So we're just going to round off a bit with looking at the Hortis roadmap in a short. So we are going to start onboarding our first vegans customers in September, and also other early adopters. So when we launch, when we start onboarding, the product will be relatively basic in some sense, in that the capabilities you will see in Hortis to start with may not match with all kinds of other products out there. But what we are also trying to do is to solve some of these fundamental problems early on. So we expect maybe, for example, some basic draft approval capabilities to be down there. But more importantly, the technical aspect of being a cloud-based, mobile-first, GIS-first product, that's definitely already on the table. And then we also will So the way we work with a team of developers and engineers, we're going to carry on, and there'll be quite a high pace of development, and there will be new releases. Again, with a cloud-based platform, we can roll out new releases at quite a high pace, and that will just carry on until 2021 and onwards. So there will be. So what we encourage people to look for is join our blog, subscribe to our blogs, join our webinars, and we're going to dig into some of these other questions we did today. We have some reference groups. People can more than happy to join that. If you want to sort of influence the way we prioritize things and the way we develop things, we have a lot of more ideas, and these kind of discussions that we had today is very useful for us, and hopefully you feel that you get something back as well with hopefully a fantastic product designed by Dave and our team. So yeah, there's a comment from Shari here. So it would also be nice to make the flower photo available when the plant is not in flower. Yeah, that's a really good way of doing artificial intelligence, or not artificial intelligence, but augmented reality. We've seen a lot of those kind of, displaying seasonality. Even in the summer, you might want to see how it looks when it's in fruit. I don't know. So there's all kinds of opportunities in how this kind of technology can help visitation, but also I would think we have another way of looking at this also with using the plant idea to do inventory. So if you can use your camera to scan the bed, you already know that the plants are live. So there's a lot of possibilities here that is yet to be sort of explored further. Okay. Are there any other questions from the group here today that we haven't talked about? Might be completely outside those three topics we started talking about. Wonderful. Okay, I think we are a bit ahead of time, but I don't think, since we're running out of, or we have no further questions, or maybe there's any more questions. I don't know. No, brilliant. Excellent. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. It was really great to see you all, and thank you for all the interaction and sharing your thoughts about what we're doing. Exactly. Yeah. So we should we will subscribe if you don't to our blog, because then you will notified. We all the subscribers get an email a couple of days before our events if you haven't put it into your calendar. So the next event is on the 12th of August, where we're going to dig deeper into value scoring. So we're going to be dissecting that a bit more, what should I say, rigorously. Again, with the value score, now with the blog, as with everything, we won't pester you with lots of emails about advertisements, etc., but practical information. Okay.
Thank you.
Good to see you all.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.